Do you like Star Wars? Have you watched all the movies and want to know what Star Wars has to offer in terms of TV shows? Or are you completely new to it all and are confused as to what you're supposed to be watching? You're in luck, because whoever you may be, this video is for you. My name is Alan and I'll be your guide to the most notable Star Wars titles you can watch on your screen. Buckle up, we're going to arrange everything on the chronological timeline, beginning with the movies that started it all. The core of Star Wars is made up of the original 6 films, which I like to call the Lucas Saga. They tell one complete story for which this whole universe was originally created, and knowing what happens in these films would be enough to follow a casual Star Wars conversation and to be generally aware of what goes on in other titles. You could approach this Lucas Saga in 2 ways: the release order, which means you watch episodes 4, 5 and 6, then 1, 2 and 3 as they were theatrically released, or the chronological order, which means you watch the more recently released episodes 1, 2 and 3 before going back to the older episodes 4, 5 and 6. It's up to your preferences. There is essentially nothing else that you have to watch. Still, if you'd like to know what to watch next, I'll tell you why you would want to watch one or another piece of work. Now let's go over each individual property and highlight what there is that is worth giving it a shot for. I've divided all these titles into 2 groups. The first group includes titles that broaden the scope of the universe, as well as introducing new characters to drive the new story. The second group includes titles that are focused on existing characters and the additional stories they go through. The titles in the second group are often follow-ups to the ones in the first group and don't require much convincing to watch if you are invested in their protagonists in the first place, which is why I'll go over them later. Let's start the first group with the sequel trilogy containing the movies The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. The story continues the legacy of Luke, Leia and Han 3 decades after Episode 6, while also introducing a new generation of heroes in Rey, Finn and Poe. The movies are known for many good and divisive things, the good being the outstanding cinematography, strong acting performances, and an overall sense of adventure. Rogue One is an anthology movie that takes place right before Episode 4. It portrays the retrieval of the Death Star plans. The movie has a spectacular, thrilling, action-packed third act that brings the war into Star Wars, and it was our first introduction to the rebel Cassian Andor, who is now a star of his own live-action series. The Mandalorian is the first live-action Star Wars series, taking place 5 years after Episode 6. It's a title full of entertaining serialized Star Wars content that introduces the helmeted bounty hunter and the world-famous Baby Yoda on their Western-inspired lone wolf and cub adventure. The Mandalorian continues the Mandalore plotline that was first established in the Clone Wars and Rebels series. The Clone Wars contains the 3D animated movie followed by the 3D animated series that share a name. It portrays the events of the Clone Wars that take place in between episodes 2 and 3 and shows all corners of the galaxy ravaged by this massive war through its thought-provoking moral dilemmas and eye-catchingly cinematic animated action scenes. As an anthology series, it shuffles many of its strikingly different protagonists very often, leaving you wondering where the series would go next. It's widely regarded to be a series with much stronger later seasons than early ones, thus you shouldn't expect to be much impressed with what goes on in the first 2 seasons. However, watching all 7 seasons is definitely worth it. I talk more in detail about why you should watch this particular series in another video. Rebels is a 3D animated series that takes place during the establishing years of the Rebel Alliance before Episode 4. It's got a diverse cast of its own, with occasional guest characters from the Clone Wars in particular. It expands on the mythos of the Force and shows what it's like to be a Jedi or a Mandalorian under Imperial rule. It features a number of entertaining villains and conveys a conclusive narrative. It might start a little slow for some people. I would suggest at least reaching the Season 2 premiere episode to witness the quality that this series is known for in its later seasons. Visions is a mostly 2D animated anthology of independent short stories produced by a multitude of studios from Japan and around the world. It's worth noting that Visions stories do not contribute to the canon timeline that other titles in this video take place in. Instead, they focus on telling their own stories, regardless of whether or not their conclusions contradict the established Star Wars universe. The stories themselves are fantastic, imaginative, and unique. 2 more titles remain in Group 1. I'll come back to them at the end of the video because they're still in production. Now let's move on to the second group, which, as I described, includes titles that focus on established characters. The first one is a live-action limited series called Obi-Wan Kenobi. It portrays Obi-Wan's emotional journey in between episodes 3 and 4, features a 10-year-old Leia as his companion, and delivers one more fantastic Obi-Wan Kenobi vs Darth Vader duel outside of the Lucas Saga. Solo is an anthology movie. As the title suggests, it's about a younger Han Solo portrayed by Alden Ehrenreich. and his first encounters with Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian portrayed by Donald Glover, and the Millennium Falcon. An entertaining, lightweight action movie that otherwise doesn't have a huge impact on the universe. Andor is a live-action series that is also a prequel to Rogue One. It focuses on the character of Cassian Andor, who was first introduced to us in Rogue One, and on the Senator Mon Mothma. A political thriller with incredible writing, suspense, and cinematography. A dramatic narrative with top-of-the-line acting and dialogue. You could easily watch Andor without having seen Rogue One. Nevertheless, they are of the same nature. Both Andor and Rogue One represent the gritty, bleak side of on-screen Star Wars. The Book of Boba Fett is a live-action series that shows the backstory of how Boba Fett survived the events of Episode 6, as well as setting him and Fennec Shand up for a new journey. This series should not be watched until you have finished Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Ahsoka is an upcoming live-action series, starring Ahsoka Tano and the crew of the Ghost. It's essentially a sequel to the aforementioned animated Rebels series and takes place chronologically after the Book of Boba Fett. Tales of the Jedi is an animated anthology series that focuses on different established Jedi's journeys, the first season focusing on Dooku and Ahsoka. If you want to watch more about either of the mentioned characters, this would be a good show for you. However, the last 2 Ahsoka-centric episodes, which are also the last 2 episodes of Season 1, contain spoilers for the finale of the Clone Wars. The Bad Batch is an animated series that focuses on a group of genetically enhanced clone troopers as they survive under the newly proclaimed Galactic Empire's rule after Episode 3. We were first introduced to the group in the final season of the Clone Wars, therefore you should treat it as a sequel to that series. Clone Wars is a 2D animated micro-series. Much like its 3D counterpart, Clone Wars portrays the events of the Clone Wars in between Episodes 2 and 3, but only focuses on the characters from the films. Much like the aforementioned Visions series, Clone Wars doesn't belong to the same canon timeline that every other title in this video does. However, unlike Visions, Clone Wars belongs to an established alternative timeline called Legends. You could learn more about that timeline through myriads of novels and games, but this is the only watchable Legends title. Resistance is an animated series nobody talks about. It's the only series set around the sequel trilogy's time. You should have watched at least The Force Awakens before starting this one. Most of the series happens on a station called the Colossus, and it incorporates a brand new set of characters. Out of all the titles on this list, this one has the lowest age rating, which I believe speaks for itself. Let's now come back to the last 2 titles of Group 1. Skeleton Crew is an upcoming live-action series. It's supposed to take place 5 years after Episode 6 and be an equivalent for Stranger Things in Star Wars. As per the creators' words, it's the story of their journey trying to find their way home. It stars 4 kids, but it's not a kids show. The Acolyte is an upcoming live-action series. It's described as a mystery thriller that will take us into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. For those who don't know, the High Republic is a Star Wars multimedia project that has so far been exclusive to published material, but will soon expand into streaming television with The Acolyte and video games with Eclipse. If you haven't read anything related to that era set hundreds of years before Episode 1, then The Acolyte will be your first introduction to it. And with this, I conclude the Star Wars watching guide. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to share it with those who might find it useful. That's it for today. I've been Alan from Khandai Kiramet, and may the Force be with you.